camminando solo lungo il marciapiede, ho sentito un suono che veniva di là. Apro quella porta, vedo tanta gente, balla ogni notte, sta cantando così. Rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, baby, come rockin' with me.
Hello, this is Tony La Stella with a special edition of the ABC Italian radio show from Palm Springs, KMET, with our special guest, Dennis Caldirola, who's going to tell us a little bit more of what's coming up.
Thank you, Tony. This is a special presentation that will be aired in Italy on April 21st at a memorial service, actually more of a symposium of friends and family of Enzo Ponticello, a bass player I worked with for many, many years and who eventually took over one of my groups. And a dear friend, I know his family and friends will all be there listening and watching. I'm going to do this interview in English and trust that since I'm talking about a story most of you know, and also I know Paolo, I know Maurizio all speak English perfectly, Stefano too, and they can help translate as we go along.
All right, Dennis. Well, great to have you on the show. And let's start right in here. I'm going to bring up this first picture because I can't believe that we were actually at one point this young. So tell us a little bit about this picture and the significance it has to the story that we're going to be talking about today.
In September of 1968, I took a boat, believe it or not, from New York to Le Havre to become a student at Gonzaga University in downtown Florence, Italy, in the Palazzo Antonori.
Wow. And how old were you at the time?
I was 20 exactly.
Wow. What an experience for a 20-year-old to go to study in Florence.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
But more importantly, on my third day there, a Friday night, I'll never forget it, I was out in Piazza della Signoria and I heard loud music coming from a club that was located, not coincidentally, down in the basement of a building there on the square. And the Italian word for basement is cantina.
Cantina.
So
okay.
I went down into a club called La Cantina.
Yeah, yeah.
And these four guys were standing on the stage playing a James Brown song, if I remember correctly.
In Italian or in English?
No, in English.
Okay, okay.
And I sat down and listened to a set and then went and introduced myself and asked if I could sit in. So I did about a half an hour. These are very accomplished musicians, even back in those days.
Yeah, yeah. So when you sat in, did you sing? Did you play?
I sat at the keyboards. I played the organ. Okay. And I led them through a couple of blues tunes, which they picked up immediately. And then we did In the Midnight Hour and some other soul material.
All in English.
All in English.
And these are Italian guys.
These are all Italian guys.
Okay, all right.
And so they loved it so much, they invited me to join them the following night. And that night I did, again, about a half an hour. And they said, this is great. What are you doing Sunday? I said, nothing. They said, well, we're playing at a Festa dell'Unità on the outside of town. This is a great big family picnic sponsored by the Communist Party. And
people forget that Italy technically is either a communist or social country, depending who's in power. But true. You know, the Italians don't pay any attention anyway to it.
In those days, le Feste dell'Unità were a big deal, and we were a perfect group for that. So I became a member of their band. I toured with them the rest of the year. They were playing weekends and a few club dates. And I don't have any pictures from that era. I'm sure.
No.
I'm sure that in all of these magazines somewhere, there's a picture of the band as they were, but I have none, believe it or not, that feature me in it. However, in June,
let's hold that one up.
Yeah, the name of the group was the Spectres, Gli Spettri.
The Spectres. Okay, all right. Okay.
And two of the members were brothers.
Yeah,
Ugo and Lello Ponticello.
All right. Okay. I think we have a. Let me see. Do we have a picture of Ugo here anywhere?
We do. He's both of them together with my dad.
There we are.
With my dad. Number two.
There we go. Number two. There we are. So that is your father.
That's my father.
And then who do we have on this side?
That's Lelo, the guitar player, also known as Johnny Guitar.
In the white outfit,
Yeah.
okay. And then the guy in the black
And
outfit.
that's Ugo Ponticello.
Ooh, okay,
his brother.
gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
So we had a wonderful winter season, and then the club we were playing in at the time, the Jolly Club, next to the Ponte Vecchio, said, listen, guys, we don't use live bands in the summertime because it's all tourists.
Right.
And mainly because they wanted to spend a little less money, but they hired me to be the disc jockey.
Oh, all right. So you were spinning records, right? Was this Italian music you were playing or American music?
Everything from soup to nuts.
All right.
Name it.
All right.
But obviously the tourist crowd went for more of the American and British material. And I have to say parenthetically that this group evolved into a pretty good blues band, because
Really?
I had my parents ship over all my Eric Clapton and Paul Butterfield albums.
Gotcha.
Lalo especially picked up on that blues guitar
Yeah.
technique. And so it was kind of a shame that all had to come to an end, but they were really, really good. And I spent the summer spinning records for tourists from New York City and Hamburg. Needless to say, it was quite a party. They went to the island of Ischia.
Ah, yes. Our friend Asunta is from the island of Ischia.
And they played at a resort for Germans for the summer.
Yeah.
And my last week in Italy, I flew down to Ischia and performed with them for a week. And after many hugs and kisses and goodbyes, I went home.
All right. So now you have some other notes here that we talked, and I'm trying to decipher these. What is Festa del
Unità? We just talked about.
Okay, that's the Festa, right?
That's the Festa.
And the Jolly Club, that was
the name of the club.
That was the name of the club.
It was
okay,
on
got it.
Bardi, 26 short steps from the Ponte
And it was
Vecchio.
all dancing.
It was all
dance.
No,
music.
my nickname in the club, the DJ.
Yeah.
They didn't get Dennis. They thought my name was Dancing.
Dancing. That's good. And so then from there, from Ischia, so then after that you went home.
I went home and I performed in a band called Hug for many years, but that's beside the point. Let's go back to Italy.
Right. Okay, so then you went back to Italy when?
The 25th of June, 1977.
So about 9 years later.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And by now, the group had turned into La Spiaggia Libera.
La Spiaggia Libera.
So there's Enzo on the end.
Yeah.
Enzo was their little brother.
He's the guy with the wild hair.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, gotcha.
He was their little brother. When I knew him in the 80s, he was 10 and 12 years old. But by the time La Spiaggia Libera was formed, he was an accomplished bass player.
Yeah.
And kind of took over as the de facto leader of the group. Along with Stefano Milani and Giorgio Di Ruvio, there's Enzo and Lelo, and they were playing psychedelic music. Because the name of the band is the Free Beach, the Open Beach.
You could almost, if you took exchange the Italian graphics for American or English graphics, they would look like an American band back in those days.
Or an English band.
Yeah, or an English band. You bet. Yeah. Good looking group of guys. All right.
So they were playing mainly at the Space Electronic in those days, a big fancy club.
Yeah.
And I don't think we performed together that summer, but we certainly did a radio show, which I will never forget.
Yeah.
And now you can go to the next slide.
All right. The radio show. This is
that one.
All right. This one here is with you and Ugo and
Lelo.
Okay.
They're interviewing me on Italian television. If memory serves, it was called, I'm going to say Canale Sette.
Canale Sette, okay.
Or it may have been Italia Sette. I don't remember.
Sette. All right.
But in any case, so we did this radio show, and they introduced me as an American singer who'd come over to perform with them on this show.
Right.
And once again, we did 4 or 5 of our old numbers together. I know specifically one of the most popular tunes we did as Gli Spettri. We also did on television. It was called Summertime by George Gershwin.
Of course.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And it was a big hit. We also told some jokes, and I made a joke in Italian that I'd never thought would work. Ugo was asking me, and how's your good friend Frank Sinatra?
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, oh, no, he phrased it a little. Come sono le cose con Frank Sinatra?
How are things with Frank Sinatra?
Very good.
All right.
And I said, ma, sai, con Frank, le cose sono sempre nostre. And the studio cracked up, so I got away with one because I didn't know if that was going to fly. Let's go on to the next slide.
All right. The next one we have is you and Enzo.
Yes. So that was again on the Spiaggia Libera radio show.
Right.
And I just want to point out to the audience that by then he was a full-grown man, and as I say, a great bass player, good singer.
So you guys are both here. Now I'm guessing you're probably about maybe
12 years apart.
30.
I'm 30.
So he's maybe like 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So then again, hugs and kisses. I went up to Piemonte to visit my relatives and flew home. And that ended that particular segment.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Now in June of 1983.
So now we're going to go ahead about another 5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I left the cruise ships where I'd been working for about 4 years.
Right. You were entertainment director and performing.
Exactly.
Yeah, on a nightly basis. Right.
So I flew to Napoli, if memory serves, with my Puerto Rican girlfriend that I met on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And we went from Napoli to Rome. At Rome, I kissed her goodbye tearfully at the train station, and came to Florence. I arrived on Friday. I knew exactly where to go. I went to the cantina, the basement where they rehearsed every day.
Yeah.
And I walked in and they went, oh, thank goodness you're here. We've got a big gig tomorrow night. And so we ran through a couple tunes.
Right.
The songs basically didn't change. Only now they weren't Spiaggia Libera. Now they were not, rock and roll hippies. They were a rockabilly band called Rockabilly e Suoi Fratelli.
The Rockabillys and your brothers.
And his brothers.
His brothers.
Rockabilly and his brothers.
Rockabilly and his brothers. Okay.
So as always, we piled into the van on Saturday afternoon and we drove up into the Chianti Hill towns.
Yeah.
I don't know if this club was located in this particular city, but one of the towns we went through was called Rocca Apili.
Rocca Apili.
No, Rocca. The Rocca
Apili. Apili. Gotcha.
And I only mention that because two weeks later, some guy took a spray can and changed it to Rockabilly.
Gotcha.
And it stayed there for 4 years.
Jeez, wow, man.
So we were playing a club called Il Frantoio. That means a mill, a giant mill. And it was a strange situation. It was owned and operated, or at least leased, by a group called I Bambini di Dio, the Children of God.
Okay.
Now, any Americans listening to this will remember that sect, also called the setto in Italiano, that cult. It was formed, believe it or not, in Seattle, Washington.
Really? Wow.
But by the time I got to Italy in 82, it had spread all over the Mediterranean. They were in Greece. My
so
cousin,
the Children of God, was this was a religious
yes,
cult?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, all right.
My cousin joined the Children of God in Istanbul, Turkey.
Really? Wow.
And he was from America.
Wow.
So here's the setup. Like any of those cults in that era, they preyed on innocent, naive kids, 20-year-olds, 18, 20, 21, and brainwashed them into calling their parents and getting donations for the sect. And that's how they financed the whole operation.
Right.
And here's their trick. They used young girls that were members of the group to go down into the cities and find tourists and flirt with them to lure them back up to Il Frantoio, where they had a big party going on every night, live bands, booze, girls, everything. And these tourist
Doesn't
kids,
sound like that bad of a religion to me.
well, if as long as you're on top,
Yeah.
But a lot of kids, my cousin, when he came home, my parents put him in detention. His parents, my uncle, put my cousin in detention, and they beat the crap out of him until he stopped wanting to go back to Turkey.
Jeez, wow.
So,
wow. Man.
skip over that.
All right.
We had a great time. We performed, and now where am I on my knees?
So you were performing at this club, Il Fantoio, which was owned by the
Children of God, yes. Now,
right?
we are missing a very key photograph.
All right.
The photograph is me with my curly hair from off of the cruise ships.
Yeah.
Singing at Il Frantoio.
Gotcha.
And getting down on my knees and doing Summertime.
Yeah.
And the crowd went nuts. The important thing is we got home at 3:00 in the morning. I went to my pensione and collapsed. And about 10 o'clock the following morning, there was a knock on my door, and I opened it, and it was the whole band.
Yeah.
Enzo, Mauro, Lello, and Ugo. And they came in the room, and I said, "What's going on?" I was in my underwear. And they said, "Dennis, have you ever seen the movie The Blues Brothers?" And I went, "Yeah." And they said, "Eri mandato da Dio." You were sent by
A
God.
mission from God.
And I thought it over for about a minute. I was 30 years old, 33 at that point. And I had been gone from my home. I had an apartment, I had a car, I had a life in Seattle.
Right.
I'd been gone for 2 years.
Because you're on the cruise ships
Right.
anyway. Yeah.
And I said to him, "I'll give you a year." And we all went out to dinner to celebrate it.
All right.
And that's how Dennis and the Jets was formed.
There you go, Dennis. And we'll show up here. Here's our first photo of Dennis and the Jets.
That's correct.
Nice. That's like a classic 50s black and white. I mean, it looks like kind of like you could be easily a band out of Brooklyn, New York, and almost like
Right. Exactly.
So
so that group, we went to work, and again, it was just a real pleasure working with these guys yet again. They are true professionals. Lalo is who I mentioned is a phenomenal guitar player.
right.
Now he had to learn Scotty Moore finger picking style to do rockabilly.
Right. Yeah.
So we got out the Elvis Presley records and the Gene Vincent records and the Buddy Holly records.
Sure.
And we put together a great set list. We got uniforms eventually. You can show that picture.
Here's there you go.
Yep.
You guys all look pretty good there. Again, it looks like you step right in and be the next Frankie Valli with that stuff,
Exactly. And it was that era.
Yeah.
And then we even added two-tone shoes. Show them the next picture.
Okay, and here we go. I see it. The black and white shoes.
Yep.
So you guys had the whole thing going there.
Yes.
Pretty spiffy.
So
pretty good.
That summer, we got better as a band, and we started doing some Feste de l'Unità and so forth.
Yeah.
And we finally locked in a permanent gig at a club called the Liberty Club on Via Verdi near Piazza Santa Croce.
Okay.
And began to build a following, especially when the American students came into Florence in September. There are 14 American colleges in Florence, Italy.
Wow, man.
So we had a pretty much guaranteed audience, regardless of whether or not the Florentine kids came.
Yeah.
Which they did, because the boys wanted to meet American girls.
Right.
So we were doing so well there that the competition down the street, which was called the Red Garter, came to us and said, "Well, instead of playing weekends here, why don't you play 5 nights a week for us? And we'll pay you an awful lot of money."
Jeez, wow,
and
sounds good.
we packed that place out for September, October. Things didn't begin to slow down until December, because all those tourists and kids all go on winter break and so forth.
Yeah.
But we really honed our sound. I came back to Seattle for a break and then went back in January, and we went in the studio. We cut a very good album. I think so to this day. But then we went to Milano, and we could not get a record deal. We knocked on every door. It's the old story. And they just didn't hear it, even though the Stray Cats played at San Remo Festival that year.
Yeah.
And blew everybody apart.
Sure.
So in the subsequent months, following year, let's put it, there were suddenly rockabilly clubs all over Italy, especially northern Italy.
Right, right.
So instead of going from little Chianti town to another little Chianti town, the guys ultimately went on and played all over the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but by the time that summer began to open up in June, 1 year, things had slowed down monetarily for us, and I was really, I needed an income.
Yeah.
And I got a phone call. I was doing dance class one day where I was learning to swing. And it was my old cruise director from my last ship. He said, Dennis, I have a brand new ship, and we want you to come and be the assistant cruise director.
Jeez.
And so the guys and I had a long meeting, and I explained to him I just couldn't spend another summer hanging out alone in the piazza, bored, broke.
Yeah.
They all had families. They all had jobs. They had day jobs. So we parted, but we played one last concert at the famous La Bussola in Viareggio down at the sea.
Yeah.
And it was a great show. I did my salto di morte, my jump of death, where I would fling myself off of the Ugo's knees and do a somersault on stage.
Oh man!
And it was a great show. So a couple days later, I had my Florentine girlfriend at the train station and tearfully kissing me goodbye. It's kind of a pattern.
The theme of this whole thing.
Yes. And I flew home to Italy only to discover that the moment I landed and walked off the plane, there was a stack of newspapers and the headline said, "Cruise ship sinks in Alaska."
Oh man.
And it was my ship.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
But I decided not to go back to Italy. I waited a year.
Yeah.
And eventually went back on ships. But our friendship has endured to this day. And now we've lost our key player. Dennis, or I should say Enzo, took over as Dennis in the band.
Yeah.
So it stayed Dennis and the Jets. And he was the captain of the band.
So is this
and the lead vocalist?
This is him in the front.
That's him in the front. That's me in the back. That's still the old group.
This is
So they started a career.
Roll this a little closer so we can see that. All right.
14 albums later.
Jeez, wow.
They were the house band on a TV show every week called Quelli della Notte, those of the night. And they had grown their hair pieces out to enormous lengths. They were known all over Italy.
Yeah.
And,
geez. So their dreams came true, didn't they?
A 30-year career after I left.
Wow.
And did very well. So
that's great. That is really great.
And now, sadly, Enzo has left us. He was an early victim of COVID 3 years ago. And now the family and friends are gathered today for this memorial. And so I'd only like to say in conclusion, carissimo bello Enzo, addio. E grazie a te e la tua famiglia per 55 anni d'amicizia.
Well, thank you very much. That's really a very, I've known you for about 40 years too. And this is a lot of your life that I didn't really know about. I knew that you had this life, but I never really knew the details until now. So it's quite an interesting story you have. But before we break here, we're going to kind of leave everybody with this last song.
Sure.
And
and you might point out to them that you are playing.
Yes. So this is Tony and the Goombas, which is our West Coast Italian radio show band here with the ABC Italian radio show. But this song is Rockabilly.
Written by Enzo and me.
Written by you and us. So tell us how Rockabilly came to be.
We wrote a lot of songs together in that period, but obviously we were staying with a theme. And I came up with the hook, rock, 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 rockabilly. And Enzo came up with the rest of the words. Lalo filled in all the guitar parts.
Yeah.
And it's the best piece we ever recorded. So
Well, sounds good. Well, we hope we did it some justice for you. But here is our recording from Festa Italiana 2021 with Dennis Caldirola of Rockabilly, which has now become an annual thing that people want to hear every year. We finish our jam with that song.
That's true.
There you go. All right.
Okay.
This song is dedicated to the memory of a good friend, Enzo Ponticello, who passed away a couple months ago. Many, many years ago, Enzo, his two brothers, and I formed a rockabilly band in Florence, Italy called Dennis and the Jets. And we toured for a couple of years, recorded some, and I finally left for the United States. Enzo took over as the lead singer, the band leader, and in effect became Dennis. So for about 3 decades, I always had a little piece of Florence left in my heart, and hopefully there as well. Vecchio amico, questo è per te.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Camminando solo lungo il marciapiede, ho sentito un suono che veniva di là. Apro quella porta, vedo tanta gente, balla ogni notte, sta cantando così. Rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, baby come rockin' with me. Fumo Coca-Cola, gambe lunghe e blue jeans, ciuffi, gin and tonic e giubbotti James Dean. Mentre sto guardando qualcuno della gente mi prende per la mano trascinandomi lì. Rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, baby come rockin' with me. Rock, 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 rock a rockabilly, rock, 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 rock a rockabilly, rock, 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 rock a rockabilly, baby come rockin' with me. Well, fumo Coca-Cola, gambe lunghe, blue jeans, ciuffi, gin and tonic e giubbotti James Dean. Mentre sto guardando qualcuno dalla pista mi prende per la mano trascinandomi lì. Rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, baby come rockin' with me. Rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, baby come rockin' with me.
Hey!
Rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, rock, 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 rockabilly, baby come rockin' with me. Me. Rock, 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 rockabilly,